Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, the creator of one of the world's most useful and popular real estate investing phone apps is with us today. And are you best serving yourself and your family by being a free spender or a frugal saver? Today on Get Rich Education.
Are you looking for a roadmap to financial freedom? If so, we have a solution for you. Norada Real Estate is offering a limited number of free strategy sessions to help you get out of the rat race. Learn how you can create wealth and build monthly passive income. To set up a time with one of our knowledgeable investment counselors, simply go to noradarealestate.com. That's Norada realestate.com.
For an income property investor like you that needs an income property loan, go to Ridge Lending Group. And over the years, you've heard owner Chaley Ridge generously give her time to you right here on the show as a guest. Ridge provides investment property loans in almost every U.S. state, and you're going to find out how they've helped more Americans realize their dreams of financial freedom through real estate than any other mortgage lender in the entire nation when you get started at ridgelendinggroup.com. Get Rich Education is brought to you by Ridge Lending Group, Producers Wealth, Norada Real Estate, and Total Control Financial.
You're listening to the show that has created more passive income for people than nearly any show in the world. This is the powerful Get Rich Education.
Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, and you are back in the land where financially free beats debt free. Before we bring in our guest, let's talk about the 5 ways that real estate investors are paid. Last month, I sent you an infographic that finally distilled down the 5 ways that real estate investors get paid, because one person in this world needed to finally produce that. You can print it all out now on one easy-to-read sheet of paper, and I had no idea that creating an infographic that the world needed would be so good for the glass business. Yes, I said the glass business. People don't often print things out on paper anymore, but some of the more interesting feedback I received came from Sean in Salisbury, Maryland, and Liz from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, where you each told me that you bought a piece of glass to put flat down on top of your desk so that you could put the 5 ways infographic underneath it, which was amazing to me. So that infographic that I had a graphic designer make after about 6 different draft versions, it breaks down how a 51% rate of return from your first year of strategically purchased buy and hold real estate is possible. Of course, typically your return will erode in subsequent years due to your incrementally higher equity position, and I really couldn't list all of the caveats like that to fit on one sheet of paper. I know that you might still want to get a hold of that infographic because you might have been one of the many that told me you missed the send somehow. Well, I'll be sure that it gets sent again for you next month. That's the 5 ways that real estate investing pays you infographic, and I'm sending that free as appreciation for our newsletter subscribers. You can opt in for the free newsletter where you also get my free ebook and then this free infographic, which I'll send again next month. Gosh, what a deal. And all you've got to do is sign up at getricheducation.com. Yes, you've got one more chance, and then that is the last send that we'll do. We've got a really smart calculating guest today, and I think that both his story and a phone app that he developed are going to increase your return on time invested. Let's meet him. And then after our chat, I want to talk to you more about spending versus saving. It'll probably give you some perspective that you've never heard anywhere before. Today's guest is a U.S. Navy veteran, real estate investor, and entrepreneur, and he and his wife have now built up a 35-unit rental portfolio, and they did it from zero in just 4 to 5 years. Their properties are spread out across 4 states. He's based in San Diego. His portfolio generates $11,000 in monthly passive income, and it requires less than 1 hour a week for him to manage. He is the founder of the DealCheck app. It's the leading real estate analysis platform for quickly analyzing and comparing rental properties, including flips and commercial buildings as well. DealCheck is actually used by over 50,000 real estate investors, agents, and professionals all around the world, so it's got a pretty good following. Welcome to Get Rich Education, Anton Ivanov.
Hi, Keith. It's great to be here, and thanks again for the invite.
Before we talk about your app, tell us your story and how you got started in real estate investing.
Sure. So I was actually born in Moscow, Russia, pretty far away from the sunny San Diego where I live now. And right around when I was 15, so high school age, my family immigrated to the United States and we settled in Southern California, where I still live. And out of high school, I actually joined the U.S. Navy, went active duty on a 6-year contract, and spent most of the forward deployed in Sasebo, Japan. So little town in southern Japan, was on a ship over there for quite a few years. And under some unfortunate circumstances, I basically became an accidental landlord, as I like to call it. Both of my parents passed away pretty close to each other in 2008, 2009 or so, and they owned a condo in San Diego where they used to live. And after their passing, I got that property. Definitely don't wish it on anybody, but that was the way I actually got started with real estate without going through the process of buying that house. I did almost sell it at the time. I was young. I was away with the military. Didn't really know anything about owning property, especially renting it out. But I talked to a few older friends that I had, kind of my mentors. They suggested, what, why don't you keep it, rent it out, see how it goes. And, maybe will work out in the long term, which it ultimately did. And I'm glad that I kept that property.
Yeah, so you were serving in the military at the time that you had this unfortunate family event and you inherited this condo while you were serving in Japan at the time. So,
Yep.
very distant remote management or asset management, if it's not the property management, if you will. And you probably didn't know anything about rent to purchase price ratios, and that San Diego is not very advantaged from that perspective. And condos oftentimes don't make the ideal rentals either. They have these HOAs, and you can suffer from the tragedy of the commons. The tragedy of the commons, that's a term used in social science to describe a scenario where individuals act according to their own self-interest, and that's contrary to the common good of all users, and they're just often not very advantageous as rentals, the condos as they are. So what happened next? You kind of have this property, so you don't have any experience going out yourself and acquiring property and vetting deals or getting loans or anything like that. You're really just learning about what it's like to be a manager.
Exactly. So I think you hit the nail on the head there with the property. It definitely was not the greatest investment. I just happened to, get my hands on it and kept it. And I think more than anything, it didn't bring in a significant cash flow for me. So it didn't change my life completely financially, so to speak.
Right.
But it did give me that insight into what owning real estate can do for you, especially from the side of passive income. Here was an asset that I now had. Once I kind of found the manager, got comfortable with them handling the day-to-day operations, it started trickling in consistent passive income. And even though it wasn't that great, it kind of opened my eyes to what real estate can do for you as an asset class. I previously invested in stocks and index funds, and they grew in value, but they didn't bring a lot of passive income, as opposed to this property that kind of trickled into my bank account. And I started thinking, this is great. If I want to retire early, which I was thinking more and more about at the time, and replace my full-time jobs income with some sort of passing income, real estate and owning rental property sounds like a great way to do it. So that was kind of the beginning of the rest of my real estate journey. And on why I ultimately decided is that, hey, real estate is a great vehicle to generate passive income. And I actually set a goal to buy 50 cash flowing rental units in the next 10 to 15 years. I gave myself until 40. And I kind of worked backwards. I said I'd be comfortable living on 150, 200,000 in passive income a month with my wife. That would be enough to replace our salaries and live comfortably in Southern California. We worked backwards at about $250 cash flow per unit. After financing, that equal to about 50 units. And that actually became our first goal. I had this one property, and then my next steps, as you said, well, where do you go from here? I really didn't know anything about buying them or buying them in such big quantities, like 50 units.
Right.
Fast forward a few years, and around 2013, I finished my tour with the Navy. I moved back to San Diego, and I started looking at, what's next for me with real estate. And my first property that me and my wife actually purchased was a local duplex that we house hacked. So if your guys are not familiar with that term, it's basically buying a multifamily property, maybe 2, 3, 4 units, living in one of the units and renting out the rest. That was basically our foot in the door with real estate. The reason we went that route was several reasons. A, single family homes in Southern California, like you said, condos, even houses are that you cannot make money on them with real estate. The prices are prohibitively expensive. You're looking at 4, 5, 600,000 just to get your kind of entry-level property. If we lived there, we didn't collect any rental income, obviously, and I wasn't confident that even if we later rented it out, it would make us any money. So we kind of focused on multifamily investment. It was a better market in terms of cap rates and rent-to-value ratios. Still not great, but at least it was better than single family. And by house hacking, that allowed us to actually take advantage of the VA loan program. So this is a loan program available to veterans and active duty military that allows you to buy a property that you're going to live in, or at least live in one of the units with a very low down payment requirement. And, we had some savings, but we didn't have enough to put 20% down on real estate here in San Diego, which is terribly expensive.
Now, the last time I checked, with a VA loan, you could put as little as 0% down on an owner-occupied single-family home, duplex, triplex, or fourplex.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We actually put a little bit more. I think we put 7% on that first property because we wanted to have a little equity, give us a little safety margin, and kind of bump up our cash flows a little bit. But you definitely can't buy it with up to 0 down, minimal savings, maybe just cover the closing costs. It's a great program, and there is an alternative for non-military members with the FHA program, slightly different. And, it has that mortgage insurance that you kind of have to factor into your cash flow projections, but similar in the sense that you can buy a owner-occupied property with little money down. So definitely 2 great programs that you can take advantage of if you don't have a lot of cash savings to start with that 20% down conventional loan.
That's right. So that's FHA programs for civilians, VA programs for those that have had military service. We're talking about non-conventional loans, but yet these are still pretty common loans that are pretty easy to get.
Exactly. So that was basically our first property, that duplex. We moved into one of the units that was in worse condition, and not only went through the whole purchase process and finding the deal, kind of interacting with brokers and contractors to help us do some rehab work. I like to say that one deal taught me more about real estate and rental properties than I've done quite a bit of reading ahead of time, listened to podcasts, read a few books, and I learned more during that one purchase than anything else I've done before. So for those folks out there who are kind of looking into real estate, doing that research phase, I think it's very easy to get in that sort of analysis paralysis mode, so to speak, keep reading and always feel like you don't know enough. I think at some point you do actually have to go out there, buy your first property. Even if it's not the best deal, you're going to learn so much from your mistakes and maybe things you overlooked that will just play a tremendous value long-term in helping you become a real estate investor.
The best way of learning is doing. And I was just talking about it on the last episode, Anton. Uncertainty is such an impediment in an investor's mind. What's one way to eliminate uncertainty? Get in the game and know how it actually feels. So now you do know how it feels with this confidence that you gain from the duplex. You still own and rent out your parents' condo, but you've realized that the best numbers and the best ratios of rent income to purchase price take place in other parts of the country. So tell us about that.
Right. So we were kind of, we had our living situation sorted out. We're living in this duplex, and we still have our goal of 50 units in the next kind of decade or so. And I started looking, okay, well, how do we scale this game from now? And I quickly realized that buying property in San Diego is just not going to get us there. There is no way realistically I will have enough money to put down payments on 50 units in San Diego at the prices that are here.
Right.
And even if I did, the returns that you get here, the rent to value, the cap rates, and your overall ROI were very low, and it just was not enticing to me. So I quickly realized that we need to branch out into out-of-state investing. And that was a whole other, kind of ball game, so to speak. I feel it's much easier to buy a local property than go in a foreign city you've never been to before, don't have any friends in, and try to buy real estate there. But that was kind of the only choice that I saw if I was to accomplish my goals that me and my wife set. So what actually we ended up doing is I went the turnkey route. So our first foray into out-of-state investing, we bought 3 turnkey properties in Birmingham and 1 single-family turnkey property in Atlanta. And I saw, there's kind of good and bad things said about turnkey investing. I definitely don't think turnkey properties is kind of a be-all, end-all strategy, and they're not necessarily completely hassle-free. But I think turnkey could be a very viable strategy to get started with out-of-state investing like I did when you're completely new. And the reason for that is because they alleviate some of the risk and work required with finding, rehabbing, placing tenants in out-of-state properties. If you're somebody like me who doesn't have a network or family or friends living in these other markets, but you do want to own real estate there, turnkey can be a good way to get in there, find a property that's already been rehabbed, has a tenant. I always advocate still kind of doing the research about where the property is located as far as the neighborhood and the actual city, but it could be a good way to get in the door with out-of-state investing. And it was for me and my wife with the properties we bought in Atlanta and Birmingham. We still own them today, and the rents and the prices have appreciated since then, and now they're great cash flowing, single-family homes. I can't say that, we didn't have kind of your typical maintenance issues and tenant turnover.
Sure.
I think you're going to have that with turnkey property or any other property for that matter. But it is kind of a good acquisition strategy, especially for new investors, that obviously me and my wife took advantage of, and it worked well for us.
So you're no longer full-time military duty at this point. You do have an active day job and a W-2 income, as does your wife, to help fund these purchases.
A lot of people look at real estate, and I hear a lot of folks that say, man, I want to do real estate full time. And that's great. But what I found with real estate investing, especially buying rental properties, if you want to scale your portfolio quickly and basically keep growing it to the point where now you generate 5, 10 or even more thousand of passive income a month, you need to fuel that growth with something. I think for most investors, the first few years of your portfolio, the first properties you buy, you will need to self-fund them. Even if you're taking advantage of the VA FHA program, once those are exhausted and you move to conventional loans, with 20% down, that money will need to come from somewhere. So what me and my wife did is we basically made a decision, look, we're going to keep working and, work on our kind of careers and try to excel in them. But at the same time, we try to live a very frugal lifestyle, not let our expenses creep as our salaries increase or we get promotions, but instead take that money and put it into our real estate portfolio and help us buy more and more properties. And looking back over the last kind of 4 or 5 years that we built this portfolio of 35 units, the bulk of the growth came from our own personal investments. And, I have no regrets for keeping to working during this time because that allowed us to buy more properties. We're getting now to the point where the portfolio itself generates a significant cash flow, over $10,000 a month, and we're saving 100% of that, and now we're using that to help us finance even more properties. But especially when you're first starting out, I don't necessarily think that just quitting your full-time job right away is the best way to do it. Perhaps keep working for a few years, but use the money you earn to actually buy income-producing assets like rental properties that will take care of you later.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Now, you bring up the word frugality, a term that certainly doesn't describe me, but I think with real estate, you get paid so many different ways that it's a very forgiving asset class, and there are a lot of ways to approach it. Anton, I already know the answer, but tell me, are you and your wife savers or spenders?
We're 100% savers. Ever since my days in the military where I wasn't actually earning that much, salary-wise, And then all through after the transition, and now I have kind of a more higher paying job in the civilian sector, we try to live a very frugal lifestyle to the point where we save over 60% of our take home pay consistently. And we've done this for years. We see some friends or kind of neighbors, they drive nice cars, they go on vacations a lot. And, that's fine. I don't have anything against it. But my goal and my wife's goal has always been to retire early in our 30s or our 40s. That will just open up the freedom for us to pursue whatever we want. And we kind of made a choice that we would rather sacrifice maybe some lifestyle choices now, instead invest this money in rental properties, but at the same time, that will allow us to retire much earlier and then enjoy the freedom that passive income gets us.
Now, this is really interesting. Anton and his wife are savers. My wife and I are spenders. Now, the term delayed gratification, there's something to be said for that. A lot of people might agree with that to some point. I don't agree in delaying too much gratification, but there's no absolute right or wrong way to do it. I'm spending about $18,000 on this Italian vacation. My wife drives a nice BMW. My mindset is I am a spender before I'm a saver, but the first thing I do, and this is probably the first thing Anton does as well, is I buy a cash flowing asset and then I spend a lot of that cash flow. But of course, some liquidity accumulates for new buys. My thing is that I use low equity positions. That way I get more leverage, which may or may not benefit me in the short term, but it should over the long term. So I want to let other people's money leverage do my saving, my really hard saving for me. Anton, I wrote an article a year or two ago, and it outlined how with 20% down payments, with 6% appreciation on real estate, 100K becomes 300K in 5 years, just to help demonstrate the power of leverage. So I do invest first, but often spending comes next. A better quality of life for me, time that I'm never going to get back. But there's no wrong approach. Anton and I just approach this both with a mindset and actions in a somewhat different way. Anton's a saver, I'm a spender. We both invest in real estate, but I invest before I spend.
Right. And I think it all ultimately comes down to finding a balance at what works for you consistently. You don't want to lie to yourself and say, hey, I'm going to save 60, 70% of my income, and it goes fine for maybe a few months, and then you break down and blow all of your savings. I think what you're doing, between you and your wife is being honest with yourself and finding that comfort balance between spending, enjoying life now, and kind of having a lifestyle that you're happy with today. But at the same time, you are saving some money and buying more real estate. And I think that's great because that's something that you can consistently keep up with, as opposed to somebody who kind of goes through extreme periods of saving and then maybe blowing all their savings. I feel that's much more counterproductive than what you're doing.
I know when you and your wife did expand your portfolio through a lot of prudent savings, you expanded into Kansas City in addition to Atlanta and Birmingham. Tell us about your Kansas City investing experience distantly.
Sure. So once we kind of got comfortable with out-of-state investing by buying these 4 single-family turnkey properties, we took about a year and a half to replenish our savings. And once we had enough to buy more properties, turnkey properties worked out great for us. At that point, my experience built up, my comfort level built up, and I felt that, I could do better and get better returns by going the more old-fashioned way, which is building a local team, finding value-add opportunities, doing some more extensive rehab work ourselves, and then leasing them out. And that's exactly what we've been doing most recently in Kansas City, specifically with multifamily properties, fourplexes or bigger. The reason we're going the multifamily route, there's nothing wrong with single family. I feel like since our goal is to reach 50 units, kind of buying, fourplexes or bigger at a time makes a little bit more sense. We can buy 4 units, instead of 1 at a time. There's less management hassle and overhead with different tax bills and property management statements. So I think multifamily investing scales a little bit better when you want to get to a large number of units. So it's definitely worked out for us and a lot of folks I know. At the same time, building your own team, finding your own deals, doing your own rehab is a lot more work than turnkey properties. It probably took me between 8 to 10 months to establish a team in Kansas City, meet all these people, fly out there, learn the different neighborhoods, where the properties that I wanted to are located, basically do as much as I can to understand Kansas City without actually living there. And then actually starting to source deals and building up my kind of acquisition funnel, so to speak, which for the most part have been off market because there's a lot of investor activity and the MLS is fairly light on good deals. So I can't say it hasn't been, work. It's definitely been a lot of work, but I feel like it paid off. At this point, we have a very good management team, a very good team of project managers and construction or / rehab crews that can do pretty extensive work. And I think we will continue buying multifamily there for the foreseeable future and actually looking to move into some commercial residential real estate, maybe in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 unit properties. I think that's just a natural progression for us at this point to help us reach our goal of 50 and probably even more units.
Now, outside of your due diligence in vetting the team, you do a lot of sort of lone wolf work. You don't get into partnerships through networking, and you also don't do things with creative financing. It's just kind of your typical available financing out there, and you've had success with that.
There's definitely different ways to approach real estate. I kind of historically looking back at the last few years, I didn't have any friends or family members or coworkers who were into real estate that I would naturally say like, hey, let's partner up, let's do this together. I think if you have somebody like that who can help you do the work, the due diligence, share the financial burden, that could definitely work. It's just, didn't work out for me and my wife. And I'm, a loner type of guy, so I don't mind doing the work and spending a lot of time on research myself. So it worked well for me. Maybe we would have been able to grow a little faster if we had partners or kind of syndicates. But I'm very happy where we got ourselves. I think it worked well for us. And the same goes for financing. There's a lot of different financing strategies. The only ones I've ever used was the VA loan on the initial duplex. I've used conventional financing many times with your typical 20% down.
Yeah.
As well as more recently, we start getting into commercial financing because we basically exhausted our conventional loan limit. So a lot of these multifamily properties we've been buying in an LLC with commercial financing, still putting about 25, sometimes 30% down. And that worked for us because, again, we have fairly high-paying jobs. We live a very frugal lifestyle, so we're able to save quite a bit of cash ourselves, plus all the income that our current properties produce, and put that into, buying new properties. But if you're short on cash or you don't have the ability, to save that much, there's definitely a lot of strategies, and I know you've covered a lot of them on this show, and I think you're a much better example than myself, obviously. There's great ways you can minimize your equity, minimize your, cash needed to fund each deal, and then still get great returns without kind of needing thousands and thousands of dollars of your own cash.
So you built your portfolio through buying rental single-family homes. Of course, you had the duplex in San Diego, and you've also got these fourplexes that you're adding on. And a lot of people try to get to those 20 loans, 10 conventional loans for the wife, 10 conventional loans for the husband. Sometimes you can max out your 20, but other times couples don't ever get to their 20. Oftentimes debt-to-income ratio thresholds are what they hit.
That's exactly what happened to us. I was just going to say I think we maxed out quite a bit below 10 because when you write your taxes, you typically want to make it look like your properties are not making, that much money. Use every possible deduction that you can. So a lot of times your debt to income ratio, which I think is usually between 45, 50%, something like that, is the max that the lenders like to see. You will, basically hit a wall where it's harder and harder to find a lender who will be willing to work with you. And that's what happened to us. And again, it's just nothing wrong with it. It's a natural part of growing your portfolio. For us, the solution was we found a really good commercial lender who offers pretty good terms, 25-year amortization, 10-year terms, and very competitive interest rates. So it naturally, we kind of transitioned to that, and it's been working well so far. But again, there's other strategies, like seller financing and maybe portfolio loans that can be used instead once your conventional loan limit is reached.
There are so many ways to do real estate, and it's the confluence of oftentimes your individual risk tolerance and your personality and your mindset and your upbringing, because we talked about how I'm a spender and you're a saver. Well, Anton and I are going to come back and talk about the app he developed for checking real estate deals. You're listening to Get Rich Education. Our guest is Anton Ivanov. More when we come back. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Finally, Total Control Financial gives you checkbook control of your 401k and IRA money to invest in real estate. It's time to get your retirement money into your own checking account, but you've got to avoid the little-known tax that you'll pay with any self-directed IRA. Instead, it's time for the QRP. Learn more and get a copy of the QRP book by text messaging the letters QRP to 72000. That's text QRP to 72,000. MC Laubscher is the host of the top-rated business and investing podcast, Cash Flow Ninja, and also the president of Producers Wealth. Producers Wealth assists people in creating, protecting, and perpetually multiplying wealth in any economy through creating processes that help them increase their production, provide them with liquidity, passive income generators, and opportunities for enormous growth. Learn more about their time-tested and proven systems at yourownbankingsystem.com.
This is our Rich Dad, Poor Dad author, Robert Kiyosaki. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold. And the reason I respect Keith, he's a very strong, smart, bright young man.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. We're talking about a real estate investing app developed by our guest, Anton Ivanov, today. Anton, tell us about the DealCheck app.
So DealCheck actually started as a small side project a few years ago, and as most of you know, doing due diligence and running cash flow projections on potential rental properties is absolutely one of the most crucial steps in helping you become a successful real estate investor. At any given time, there's thousands of properties for sale in each market, and one of your jobs as an investor is to find the one that will bring you the best returns, the best cash flow. It's a good amount of work that goes into doing that analysis. So a few years ago, I used Excel like a lot of investors I know still do, and kind of had some spreadsheet going where I would run these numbers.
Sure.
And there's got to be a better tool. And I specifically was looking for something I can use on my phone or my computer. This was back when I was driving around looking for that duplex here locally. I'd go to an open house. My agent will give me some numbers and I want to plug them in right away and just kind of see, hey, what's my cash flow going to be? So I didn't find quite anything that I liked that fit the bill, and I actually built the first version of DealCheck myself. So what it really is, a DealCheck is an app you can use online at DealCheck.io. So it's a browser version. You can use it on any computer, or you can download the DealCheck mobile app to your tablet phone. It works on iOS and Android, and it's a property analysis tool. So it's perfect for helping you figure out, how much cash will you need to close this deal, help you itemize your closing costs, figure out what your financing is going to look like and how much actual money you need to close on this deal, then help you analyze your cash flow. What's your total expenses going to be per month or per year, what your net operating income is going to be. And then following that, it gives you a wide range of metrics to help you calculate your returns, from the basic ones like cap rate to cash on cash returns to something more advanced like internal rate of return and return on equity and gross rent multiplier and debt coverage ratio. So perfect for doing quick analysis on your phone and your computer, figure out if a rental property, or you can even do a flip or a rehab project, will basically fit the bill. We have a way to set up a custom criteria set so you can actually quickly screen deals. Say, hey, my minimum cap rate is 6%, my minimum cash on cash is 12%. Our app will instantly essentially grade a property and tell you if it's going to be worthwhile to look into further. You can look at projections for up to 35 years into the future and actually see how the rental property will perform, or look at exit strategies and say, hey, after 10 or 15 years, what my total ROI is going to be on the property. And there's a few other cool tools, like you can export full complete PDF reports for each property. Basically, it's a beautiful formatted report with maps and photos. Looks like you spent hours on it, but, it's really just one click. And we have a lot of investors who send these out to their lenders or partners or clients if they're an agent, basically present all of the information about a property in one place. And we also have an offer calculator. So this is actually a tool where you can plug in certain criteria that you have for the property, like minimum cash flow, minimum cash on cash return. And our app will actually calculate you the highest price you can pay on this property. So if you're looking at, well, what should I offer on this property to the seller, you can use that as a starting point to help you figure out what price will make this deal actually work for you and attractive, and use that to write the offer. So you can try DealCheck for free. We have a free tier that you can use forever. It's perfect for kind of smaller scale investors if you don't analyze a lot of properties. We also have more feature-rich optional upgrade version we call DealCheck Pro. You can upgrade at any time, but again, you don't have to. I've set up a custom promo code specifically for your listeners, Keith. So if you type in GRE25 off at checkout when you upgrade to DealCheck Pro, you'll get a 25% discount. So again, that's GRE25 off, OFF. You'll get that discount, or just try DealCheck for free online at DealCheck.io, or try it on your phone by downloading the DealCheck iOS or Android app.
Well, thank you so much for that promo code for our listeners. Anton's really made something useful here. 10 or 12 years ago, people weren't on their phones. They didn't have a smartphone. And 10 years from now, they might not be on one either. But this is useful because it's right in your hands. I have the DealCheck app on my phone, and I've used it. And, here's something I have to say about real estate math. The calculations are really simple. In real estate, every time it's just addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. Anton, I don't think I've ever used trigonometry or calculus or even exponents in real estate investing. But here's the thing. It's knowing which calculations to do that are not as simple. And there really are a lot of calculations in real estate investing. So the app is really just a real time saver.
Exactly. And I think it works really well, especially for new investors and those folks who are not really familiar with, hey, what are all these ratios and which one I should focus on? What DealCheck really does is, it takes the guesswork out of the calculations for you, because if you're new to real estate, you have a lot of factors to worry about. There's so many potential mistakes you can make. The last thing I feel you want to do is make mistakes in your math just because you didn't know better, and that will kind of result in you buying a property that doesn't cash flow as well as you can. So DealCheck takes all of that out of the equation. We use time-tested industry standard formulas for all of our math. And on top of that, we make it 100% transparent with a built-in glossary we have. So there's basically a little icon with a question mark you can click next to any term. It'll take you to a page that explains what this term is, how it's calculated. You can see the exact formula. So not only you can actually, see how the math is done, it helps new investors learn the formulas, get comfortable using them and actually understand which ones are important when they look at the analysis projections.
That's right. Rather than just spitting out a debt coverage ratio of 1.4, you can touch on the little question mark with a circle around it, and it will tell you how that was calculated. So you could work it back if you wanted to. So it's really a way to learn and not just dumb things down for people, and you have really good integrations as well. For example, you can import data directly from the MLS into your app.
Exactly. That's one of the really popular features we've recently added. Nobody likes typing in stuff manually. You can just type in an address of a property. We'll pull the information, list price, photos, description, give you a head start with analyzing the property. So you're obviously not making simple mistakes like how many bedrooms and bathrooms the home has.
Well, Anton, you've really built something useful for this real estate investing industry, which is fractured and oftentimes quirky. So I'm really grateful that you made the DealCheck app. It's been great having you here on the show.
Keith, I had a great time. Thanks again for the invite.
I hope that you like that. I invited Anton onto the show for you because he's got an app that I think you're going to find really useful. Anton and I each had our early real estate investing experiences in our home markets, his in San Diego, mine in Anchorage, but we soon learned, just like you probably did, that the numbers work better in other markets, and there's a turnkey infrastructure that you can tap into so that you can invest into other markets conveniently. So the next thing we each did was buy turnkey real estate in the Midwest and South. It sounds like Anton and I are both investors first, so we have that in common. If you couldn't tell, what I found most interesting and what you might find most interesting is that he says that he and his wife are savers. I classify us as spenders. In fact, I think this show is probably going to be titled Spenders versus Savers, and I didn't really see our discussion going that way. Anton says he and his wife live life very frugally financially. They're savers. I think some people are afraid to admit or say that they're spenders. Well, I am one, although I'm still an investor first. I would say that if you're going to be a substantial spender of your rental property's cash flow, well, then you had better have a great income plan to feed that then. Now, I do accumulate some liquidity, but I use that word liquidity more often than savings, just partly due to the connotation linking savings and financial frugality. Whatever, maybe that's all just semantics. I say be frugal with your time, not your money. My quote-unquote savings accounts are locked away in property equity. Leverage can make that grow fast. When it's trapped in equity, it's also difficult for me to consume that equity. It is illiquid, and there's less temptation to spend that. Well, what if the market takes my equity away? Because leverage can also make equity disappear fast. Well, for one thing, I'm in more stable markets where that's less likely to happen. But what if it does happen? Well, then, rather than devoting more of my cash flow to spending, perhaps more of it would get allocated, accumulated in liquidity, rather than spending. What do you want to be frugal with, your time or your money? Which of those two? If you listen to this show, what do you think is a more abundant resource, time or money? If you think money is a more abundant resource than time, then wouldn't you be more frugal with your time than your money? Or maybe you perceive money as more scarce than time. I myself have seen a lot of money come and a lot of it go too. Yep, I am a high velocity of money person. I'm confident in being a spender because ultimately I feel like I know how to make a good income. I can back it up. In life, if any activity or interest out there is worth doing, that activity is worth doing well. I think life itself is just the same. That's why life is worth doing well. I could totally have a larger real estate portfolio if I were financially frugal. I'm frugal with my time, not my money. And it sounds like Anton is different. And that's okay. That's a different angle. But again, importantly, he and I are both investors first. And they're spending, and then they're spending profligately as well. Sometimes I fly first class, but I don't have first class seats on every flight. There's just really no right or wrong answer here. It's just how I choose to do life. And that's why this whole thing is called personal finance. It is personal finance. Ask yourself, do you want to live the full spectrum of life, all of your life, or not? If you want to make great sacrifices now, yeah, it does increase the chance that you'll live better later. So do you want to live your best life now or live your best life later? I'm trying to do both as best I can. That's how I think of abundance. Here, I think I've got a great example for you on living the full spectrum of life at each age and chapter of your life. Okay, a few summers ago, I wanted to break the 5-minute mile, run a mile in under 5 minutes. That was something that was important to me, influenced by my upbringing, that I run a mile in under 5 minutes. And yes, that is a little longer than 4 laps around a standard 400-meter track. And I wanted it to be at a U.S. track and field certified event so that I know that the sub 5 mile would be legit. Now, it often surprises people that I don't manage the rental properties that I own in my own hometown. More than that, I don't even mow my own lawn. During the summer, I pay someone $60 to have my lawn mowed each week. Well, that's the stuff that opens up time so that I can pursue other interests exactly like training to break the 5-minute mile. So I'll tell you here my mindset that goes into decisions like that. Can mowing your lawn lead to any great accomplishment? No, it never can. Can mowing a lawn be outsourced? Yes, it can. That's why I have never mowed my lawn once. But look, to a frugal and even pretty reasonable person, this is a valid angle, they might look at this situation and say, dude, really? You're paying $60 to have someone mow your lawn when you're a more than able-bodied person while you're out training harder to run in circles faster? I can simultaneously hold in my mind that both angles are valid. But look, it's extremely improbable that I could have sacrificed it all now and deferred the sub 5 mile until age 50. I don't know if I could physically do it then. This is what I mean about living the full spectrum of life during each chapter of your life. Anton had a different upbringing than I. He lived his first 15 years in Russia, then he was in the military. Well, of course that means that he's going to value things differently than I do. In fact, his frugality has enabled him to accomplish passive income real estate goals faster than me. From the time he bought the duplex until today, which is less than 5 years, he's got $11K in passive monthly real estate income. I owned my first property, a fourplex, 5 full years before I even had my second property, and it took me a total of 12 years from buying that first fourplex to get out of the rat race. Well, Anton is well ahead of that pace, and I think that his frugality is the difference. That is a measure of success for him. That's just a different type. Good for him. That's what he values. Another cool thing about Anton is that I've read that 85% of people are dissatisfied with their day job. Anton still has a day job, and he tells me that he loves his day job. Well, good on him again. I'm just being really open with you. As a day job employee, I never woke up excited to go to work Monday morning. Like, never. Perhaps Anton is. Well, that's cool. That's great. He found something that I never found. Now, today, I'm excited to get up on Monday morning and every morning because I don't have a day job. I'm not always going to agree with every guest we have on the show here. In fact, I think that we disagree about frugality is what made this episode most interesting. Simultaneously, I just don't find either of us wrong. You have got to do you, and the world would be pretty boring if we were all the same. The DealCheck app is a free app. If you like it and you find that you want more features, you can upgrade to premium and get 25% off by using the 8-character promo code GRE25OFF. Thank you to the talented Anton Ivanov and his great story today. The 6 different sub 5 mile attempts that I made resulted in times of 5 minutes, 15 seconds, then a 5:10, 5:05, 5:03, and excruciatingly close 5 minutes, 0.1 seconds, and then the last one on a day that I'll always remember when most of my friends no longer came to watch me because I had missed the mark 5 times, and it was only my wife and 2 friends, 4:59.62. I made it by less than 0.4 of a second. I lived one of my daydreams. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
Ranked by Forbes as one of the fastest growing cities, Orlando, Florida has a big and diverse economy, yet still features affordable rental properties that cash flow. Our boots on the ground turnkey provider, Greg Bond, wrote a special report to help you discover the amazing market of Orlando. Request your free copy today. Visit GetRichEducation.com/Orlando. That's GetRichEducation.com/Orlando.
71% of Americans aren't saving enough for retirement. It's going to get worse as people live longer, and you need to start thinking differently. But you can't lose your time. Real estate is the investment vehicle that's made more ordinary people wealthy than anything else. Keith Weinhold of Get Rich Education is host of one of America's top investing shows, Disrupting Wall Street. He's an international best-selling author, a writer for Rich Dad Advisors, and has been an active income property investor since 2002. He has created thousands in passive monthly income for countless followers followers, and now he has a free book, The 7 Principles for Creating Wealth in Your Life. Get your copy now at GetRichEducation.com/book. That's GetRichEducation.com/book. Because invest in what produces income for you now and later. Sign up now at GetRichEducation.com/book.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.